This is WA Amateur Radio News for Sunday, May 21st, 2017.
Welcome to the NewsWest broadcast, brought to you by the team at WA Amateur Radio News, VK6ARN. I'm Glenn, your producer this week, and thanks for taking the time to listen in. It's been another busy week for the NewsWest team, with multiple deadlines to meet and Andrew heading over to Adelaide. In this broadcast, Ono talks about the evolution of amateur radio over time and its technical diversity. Andrew in his editorial explains the challenges the new WIA board have in front of them in the wake of the AGM and why it's important for all of us as members. We hear from Ty and what's coming up next for the WA VHF group. Targeting new and sometimes old hams, we discuss some advice for you once you get your licence with 3 possible first steps to get you started, what you can expect on air, and why it's important to join the WIA. A few quick reminders about meetings, the upcoming 800th TechNet, as well as the VK Shires contest. And Roy's back. He's looking to hear from you. Yes, you. First, in late-breaking news, Andrew's called in to give us an update from the Wireless Institute of Australia Annual General Meeting.
I'm with Andrew Smith, who's in Hahndorf. What was the AGM like, Andrew?
The AGM was a complete and utter shambles, Ono. It was quite interesting. At the beginning, we found out in our packs that we'd been given a 17-page document of answers to questions and motions on notice. But in fact, this statement posed more questions than it really answered. But of course, the chair wasn't going to allow any discussion about it. When we got to sorting out the minutes of last year's AGM, what I can only describe as chaos took place. There was a complete lack of knowledge, guidance or leadership from the chair. We ended up having 3 different sets of votes, which was the only time we were allowed to use our proxies, and legal opinion is going to be sought. But basically, the minutes of the 2015 AGM and financial reports were accepted, despite the fact that there are significant financial irregularities.
Tell me a little bit about the room. I mean, how many people were there? What kind of participation was there? What was the mood in the room?
We had about 180 people in the room, which I think is the biggest number that have ever attended an AGM. Quite a lot of people who aren't registered for the meeting were there, a lot of local VK5s. The mood was generally supportive of the board. They felt that they'd probably done as good a job as was possible. But there really wasn't a lot of opportunity for discussion to take place, unlike the Norfolk Island AGM. The chair essentially cut off any form of discussion. We ran over by about half an hour.
So the conversation that you had prior to the AGM about, how things were going to evolve and how voting was going to be influenced, call the board to account, how did that transpire?
Nothing of that transpired because the board had taken legal advice, which essentially meant that they weren't going to vote on any of the financial results for 2016. They weren't going to vote on the appointment of auditors, and the chair refused to release the legal advice that said that they didn't have to do so.
So what does this mean for the incoming board? How will they have to wrap this up and deal with the fallout of this AGM?
I think that the new board is going to have some significant difficulties. They've been left with a large number of financial questions to be asked because the previous year's accounts really don't cover the financial situation. They've also been left with major problems in terms of dealing with membership. There's a significant lack of cooperation by a proportion of the members. They're going to need to build very hard on that in 2017.
All right, so onwards and upwards, and little recourse for the existing board by the sound of things.
Yes, I think that they've got a hard task ahead of them with the new board. They've been introduced to us. They've shown an enthusiasm to go ahead and really do good things, and we obviously all need to get behind them and encourage them as far as possible. I'm sure they're going to do their very best.
All right, well, we should probably see if we can get the new board to participate on a say monthly basis and contribute to NewsWest. Let us know what's happening in the WIA from their perspective.
As soon as I find out who's going to be elected president, which will be at the new board first meeting tomorrow, Sunday, I'll ask and see if we can get somebody to commit to a recording on a regular basis for NewsWest.
That will be great. Well, thank you very much for your report from Hahndorf. Good luck with the open forum and the conference. Seems that there's a big program ahead of you.
This is the best bit's about to come. I think the AGM was something that just had to be got over. Now we're going to have a decent forum and looking forward to the other radio activities. Thanks very much, Onno. This is Andrew, Victor Kilo 6 Alpha Sierra from Hahndorf, VK5.
73.
You're
listening to NewsWest, Victor Kilo 6 WIA. Broadcasting amateur radio news since 1931 for radio amateurs and shortwave listeners.
A special thanks to Andrew for taking time out after the AGM in Hahndorf to call us, and for working with Onno to get this in time for our production deadline. And over to Onno.
Foundations of amateur radio. The hobby that we call amateur radio has been around for over a century. During that time, we've seen it evolve from capacitors, inductors, through valves, then diodes and transistors, through to integrated circuits, chips and surface mount components. Along the way, we collected a vast body of knowledge and experience which combined to make the hobby what it is today. You might have noticed that the progression of our hobby didn't stop with surface mount components. It's still evolving through software, and the next frontiers are already tentatively being explored and offered for sale to curious amateurs. In my day job, I'm a software engineer, and I adopted amateur radio as my hobby of choice because it was technically diverse, had a rich history, a large community, and had little to do with my day-to-day pursuits in computing and information technology. How wrong was I? This morning I started writing code to visualize audio, specifically in my case to make a video version of this weekly segment, but also to experiment with how we as humans use our senses to decipher information. As I was buried inside the decoding of audio, it occurred to me that what I was doing was the equivalent of soldering together a circuit for the purposes of learning more about some aspect of my hobby. This in turn made me realize that as we dive deeper and deeper into the software-defined radio universe, more and more of what we as individuals can do will be based on computers, algorithms and maths. On the face of it, this is an enormous shift in perspective. But I'd hazard that it's no different from moving between a spark gap transmitter and an AM transmitter, or moving from AM to SSB, or the introduction of transistors. Each of those changes now look pretty small with hindsight, but at the time that they occurred, their impact must have been immense. I made contact with the software-defined radio community a few weeks ago, and in between my work, I'm slowly beginning to explore this new universe that is beginning to unfold. Of course, as this evolution happens, while we're in the middle of the transition, as in right now, there'll be discussion about the difference between digital and analog, between hardware and software, about the benefits and pitfalls, no doubt mirroring prior discussions that have been had across the past generations of amateurs. A new dawn has come, and the future is here. Come and join the fun. I'm Onno, Victor Kilo 6 Foxtrot Lima Alpha Bravo.
Getting into the hobby of amateur radio is as simple as getting in touch with Ham College and getting your foundation license. To encourage the new amateurs on air, we'd like to share with the people who have gained or upgraded their license in the past month. Either something's broken at the ACMA, or we only have 2 licenses to share with you this month. We've got Glenn, Victor Kilo 6 Foxtrot Romeo Whiskey Tango, and Anthony, Victor Kilo 6 Zulu Golf Zulu. For the new call, congratulations on joining amateur radio, and if you're a dab hand, enjoy your new on-air identity. Of course, if you hear these calls on air, please make them feel welcome. Just in case you're wondering, there are now 1,406 amateur licenses held in VK6 today.
You are listening to NewsWest, broadcasting weekly news and commentary since 1931 for VK6 radio amateurs, shortwave listeners and radio enthusiasts. This is VK6WIA.
NewsWest is produced and presented by WA Amateur Radio News, and opinions expressed in this news may not reflect the opinion of the news team, the broadcaster or the WIA, and are shared in the open spirit of amateur radio.
I'm at the WIA AGM and conference in Hahndorf this weekend. As this bulletin is broadcast on the repeater network on Sunday morning, the AGM of the WIA will have been completed and the first meeting of the new board should be underway and a new president and vice president elected. Whether or not a live stream or even a recording of the AGM will occur when I recorded this is somewhat in doubt, but information on proceedings will soon get around. The new board clearly has some major tasks ahead of it. The singular most important issue is the financial situation. I'm sure they will rapidly move to set up a finance committee, appoint a treasurer, engage a bookkeeper, and then be able to provide accurate financial statements on a regular basis, not just to the board but to the membership also. I suspect that some difficult decisions may have to be made about, for example, the continuation of the printed copy of AR magazine and whether or not the office should be decentralised and the space rented to provide an income stream. The board then needs to take a long and hard look at the relationship with the regulator, the ACMA. This is not just about the important area of protection of our areas of the spectrum, but clearly has to look at the current assessment methods for amateurs by bringing that into the 21st century, and considering removing us from any spurious relationship that we now have to the VET and TAFE sectors. Perhaps to do as was done in Britain, so that one separate arm of the WIA can be responsible for maintaining quality and the audit of standards, and the second, completely separated, the actual delivery of the assessments, the updates of the question banks, and of course curriculum review. Regaining the trust of the ACMA so that the WIA remains to be the peak body representing radio amateurs in Australia is critical. Their third task must be to work on the culture of the WIA. Amateurs must see the tangible benefits of being a member. The organisation must become more responsive and transparent. Communication must improve and the Institute must be seen to be there for the protection and benefit of the members and not for a small clique of insiders. The committee structure has to be reviewed and positions filled with individuals with knowledge and expertise in their special area. As a previous director said on the national news last year,
"Look out for me on the bands from Norfolk Island. I'll be signing VK9NJ, Victor Kilo, number 9, Norfolk Junket. Advocacy, education, support, that's what we do." This has been WIA Director Roger Harrison, VK2ZRH, for VK1 WIA News.
Disgraceful, wasn't it? Let's encourage the new board to do what it intends to do and not let directors abuse the members, as this sort of stuff must now be in the shameful past. Join the WIA if you aren't already a member, rejoin if you've lapsed, and don't forget to renew when your subscription is due. The WIA is not yet out of crisis, but it will recover with your support.
News from WA VHF Group. The group is made up of a collection of like-minded people who are interested in the many aspects of amateur radio. Most members have dreams and aspirations to extend their knowledge by seeking advice from experienced radio amateurs, locally or globally. At the next meeting on Monday 22nd of May, the activity for the evening is to get a broad view from the members where the club can assist them in achieving their goals. How can the group help in any challenges members are having, maybe in aerials, transceivers, mains or portable power supplies? As time permits, there's a bonus talk on the appreciation of advanced modular systems and lifting the veil of mysticism on microprocessors. All members and visitors are welcome at 7:30 p.m. for an 8 o'clock start at the Operator's Cottage opposite Wireless Hill Museum in Ardross. The next activity day is Saturday, 3rd of June at 2 p.m. at the Operator's Cottage. The Wireless Hill Museum has an exhibition going. It's called The Wire, A History of Morse Code in WA. Doors at the museum are open Wednesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m, and Sunday, 12 noon to 4 p.m, until the 2nd of July. More information can be found at www.wavhfgroup.org.au. 73 from Ty, VK6HTY for the WA VHF Group.
And now to amateur radio meetings across VK6 for the next week. This is from the VK6.net calendar and is therefore only as accurate as the information provided to the team here at NewsWest. The Northern Corridor Radio Group gather today as we go to air Sunday morning with their weekly get-together and working bee from 8:30am. You'll find them at the Neil Penfold State Amateur Radio Centre at the northern end of Whiteman Park, access via Nangara Road. The WA VHF Group meet at the Operator's Cottage at the Wireless Hill Museum in Ardross from 8 till 10pm on Monday night. The NCRG have their monthly general meeting from 7:30 Tuesday night. Prawnheads, the Perth Amateur Radio and Wireless Noodle House Eating and Discussion Society gather for a pizza lunch on Wednesday. Head to Don's Place. Check Facebook for more information. On Thursday there's a scheduled Southwest Ham and Coffee meet. If you're going to be down Bunbury Way, contact Alec, VK6APK, for more details. On Saturday, Haag, the Hills Amateur Radio Group, met at 2 p.m. at the Paxhill Guide Hall, corner of Sanderson and Brady Roads in Lesmurdy. Have a great week. 73.
So you have your licence. What's next? Welcome to the wonderful world of amateur radio. You've just joined a brotherhood and sisterhood of thousands of like-minded amateurs who are engaged in one of the most fascinating hobbies on the planet. I bet you can't wait to get on air, and you'd probably like some help on choosing a radio, antenna and other accessories. You might also want to join your local radio club as a good way of getting advice. A hint, ask your fellow ham what was the second radio that they bought as well as the first one. If you've just gained your foundation licence, one of your first steps might be to investigate moving on to a standard or advanced call. By doing so, you'll get greater responsibilities and also extend your knowledge of amateur radio. But in the meantime, let's look at just 3 things you could do with your new licence. First, make a contact on 2 Meters FM. 2 Meters is a great band for getting to know us locals. With a maximum range of around 80 kilometres or so under normal conditions, you stand a great chance of finding someone to talk to. Most areas are served by repeaters. VK6, with the resources of the WA Repeater Group, has great coverage. But if not, a CQ on the calling frequency of 146.500 MHz might rustle up a contact. Secondly, use 2 Meters single sideband. If you can put up a horizontal beam antenna, then you can take part in the world of 2 Meters, that's 144 MHz single sideband. SSB carries further than FM and will allow you to make contacts up to perhaps 160 kilometres under what's called flat conditions. But when the weather conditions are right, and this is usually associated with high-pressure systems, we can get a lift, or tropospheric enhancement to give it its proper name. When this happens, signals can pour in from even further afield, up or down the coast from Perth, or across the Great Australian Bight from the south of the state. There's a 2-metre SSB net every night in Perth at 6:30 p.m. on 144.125 MHz. Finally, get on the HF bands. Australian radio amateurs have access to a large number of bands and each have their own characteristics. For example, 80 metres, that's 3.5 MHz, and 40 metres, 7 MHz, are useful during the day for local contacts, while 80 metres is better for this kind of activity near the solar minimum, as we are now. Once the sun sets, however, both bands start to open up to contacts at longer distances. In fact, 40 metres is a fantastic band, offering you everything worldwide, although it can get crowded at times. And here in VK6 we have a problem with one of our northern neighbours that have a less than satisfactory regulatory control over the use of these bands and can be a source of much interference. Looking further up the dial, we come across 10 metres, 28 MHz. At sunspot minimum it can be dead for days on end, but it can come alive with incredibly strong signals from around the globe during the day. There's an active Australian Facebook group for 10 metres. The great thing about 28 MHz is that the antennas can be quite small. A half-wave dipole is only about 5 metres long. Even with such simple antennas, it can be easy to work DX. If you have a foundation licence, your 10 watts can go a long way indeed. With thanks to the resources of the RSGB.
When you get your shiny new amateur licence, you join a community of radio amateurs going back over a century with a rich history, an active sense of self, a large range of activities, a bustling club life, and science and inventions to boot. Finding the community is the first step. If you're listening to this news bulletin, then you've already made that first connection. Looking on the VK6.net website will further give you access to clubs and activities, show you what's on where and when, and give you links to resources. If you already have a radio and a functioning antenna, you'll be keen to get on air and start communicating with other amateurs. If you join this community like most other people, you'll have found yourself in a class with others and obtaining the beginner's license. In Australia, this is called the foundation license. Making noise on air, using your call sign, will introduce you to many wonderful people across the globe. But it will also introduce you to a group of people who would rather see the end of the hobby than your on-air activity and participation in the community. They'll actively ignore you on air, making you wonder if your signal is getting out, or make comments about ignoring those horrible F-calls, or actively interfere with your enjoyment of the hobby by jamming your signal, making abusive comments, or demanding that you update your license at their insistence, rather than your interest. The amateur community has all sorts of people. Fortunately, there are more great people than not. But you should be aware that there is an element of self-righteousness that is unparalleled in the rest of society. Rest assured, you're not on your own and you don't have to put up with it. If you need to, you can report such obnoxious behaviour on the No More Bullies page on the VK6.net website. In the meantime, from one amateur to another, welcome to the community. Get on air and make some noise.
The federal government has recently released a consultation package on spectrum reform that aims to modernise and simplify Australia's spectrum management framework. You'll find the consultation package on the department's website at communications.gov.au. The package includes a draft of the 2017 Radio Communications Bill, consultation papers on provisions of spectrum and transitional arrangements, along with consultation on spectrum pricing. Recommendations from the 2015 Spectrum Review include replacing current legislative arrangements with new legislation that removes prescriptive processes and streamlines licensing to make it more flexible and simple. Better integration of the spectrum management for public sector and broadcasting to improve integrity and consistency, and reviewing spectrum pricing to ensure consistent and transparent arrangements for efficient use of the spectrum. So, how do amateurs get a voice at the table? The answer? Join the WIA. In 2016, only 30% of licensed amateurs were members of the WIA. Whilst this is actually higher than the ARRL and RSGB, it's important that all Australian amateurs are represented. So if you aren't already a member, and particularly with a new board coming in, now is the time to join. What do you think, Abby?
The Wireless Institute of Australia is the oldest national amateur radio organisation in the world. Since 1910, the WIA have been providing benefits to both members and non-members through their tireless activities. We certainly wouldn't enjoy the spectrum and licensing system we have now if it weren't for the WIA's activities with lobbying the government, membership and involvement in the IARU, as well as their management of licence, exams and assessments. Other membership benefits include a monthly high-quality magazine delivered to your home and now also available to members free online as a PDF if you choose to use it, free use of the WIA QSL service, accident and public liability insurance for affiliated clubs. There is no charge for WIA members and a small fee for non-members. Weekly national news service, discount access to the WIA bookshop including the annual call book, and knowledge that WIA helps support your local club. The WIA also manage the education of amateurs, issuing of certificates of proficiency and call sign allocation. These services are available to all amateurs. To find out more about the WIA, visit their website at www.wia.org.au.
You are listening to NewsWest, broadcast by VK6WIA.
Trent, VK4TS, tells us that the VK Shires QSO party is only 3 weeks away on the weekend of the 10th and the 11th of June, and it promises to be a big one. It's looking like there'll be a lot of Shire activations this year in the VK Shires, so get ready to nab the rare ones. The low bands are really firing with conditions coming off on the high bands. Typically in the lower sunspots, 40 metres comes into its own and 80 metres opens up as well. The VK Shires QSO party is limited to the frequencies of the Australian Standard Call, and so there is no 160 metres, but otherwise all traditional bands 80 through 10 metres are used. And Trent shares with us a contest tip. Log what you hear. The contest log checkers can cater for errors by senders, i.e. giving out the wrong codes, in the VK Shires, but we can't credit you if you copy different to what was sent to you. If you're using VK Contest Logger, it can be forced to log a Shire that is not in the list. So rather than waste time, log it and go forwards. The committee cater for it in the cross-checking software. Always broadcast your call sign every QSO, this also limits errors. Of note, for portable stations, the normal format for a logger is the prefix followed by a call sign, rather than the other way around. If you log VK4 X-ray stroke Papa 5, that'll put the call sign in North Korea and not South Australia in VK5. And that was from Trent, VK4TS.
Last reminder. This is the last reminder for next Saturday morning. This will be the 800th Friday Night TechNet, broadcast from the WA RAF Association and Aviation Heritage Museum in Bull Creek. Reg will be operating the net on the 27th of May, starting at midnight UTC, or 8 AM Western Standard Time, from inside the Lancaster bomber at the museum. The museum normally doesn't open until 10 AM, but expect that there will be volunteers on hand to accommodate the early arrival of any amateurs who'd like to take part on the morning. Alternatively, join the net from 0100 UTC on Perth repeater VK6RLM or IRLP node 9229. This is a great opportunity to promote amateur radio, the museum, and to help Reg celebrate the 800th TechNet milestone. He hopes to see you there. For more information, just look up Reg VK6BQQ on QRZ.com or head to VK6.net and look for the story.
Over to Roy.
Greetings once again, it's Roy, VK6XV. It might be a sign of the times, or maybe just no one's got any money, or they don't want to sell, but we have no items for you this week. It doesn't happen very often, but it's happened again, and if you would like to include any items for next week's broadcast, please contact me by email. The address is Victor Kilo 6 X-Ray Victor at bigpond.com, Victor Kilo 6 X-Ray Victor at bigpond.com, with helpline in the subject line. Thank you. And I hope to have some items for you next week. Keep listening. Cheers for now. 7-3.
Thanks, Roy, and I hope you pick up some bargains.
Before I wind up, a quick reminder. Here at WA Amateur Radio News, we're always looking for new voices or contributors. In particular, news of VK6 operations. We need your contributions, so get in touch with us via email, newswest@vk6.net, or via the vk6.net website. A very special thanks to the NewsWest team for their various and valued contributions this week. Andrew, Onno, Roy, Ty, and Abby. Get on there and make some noise, and most importantly, enjoy. I'm Glyn, Victor Kilo 6, Papa Alpha Whiskey, for Victor Kilo 6 Amateur Radio News. 73.